It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the weekend before Thanksgiving 2006, November 17th, with 6 movies, a lot of big movies all across the board. And, we got a Penguin movie directed by the guy who did Mad Max. We've got the first movie from the Daniel Craig James Bond era. We have a Bob Odenkirk comedy that was one of 2 comedies he made within a year that were not successful. Richard Linklater is back with a very interesting film indeed. Christopher Guest is back with another ensemble, and Emilio Estevez directs the story of the day that Bobby Kennedy died. A lot of films to get to here. I've already wasted more time than I should have here, so let's just go ahead and just jump on into it. And we'll start off with one of my favorite movies of all time, the biggest new release of the weekend, and that is Happy Feet. Who would have guessed that this movie, of all the animated movies released in 2006, would have the much more lasting impact than most of the other movies that came out this year? But this is the first animated feature by George Miller, and it's set up in the cold land of Antarctica, where you follow a penguin named Mumble, played by Elijah Wood, who's an emperor penguin who's able to tap dance brilliantly despite lacking the ability to sing a heart song to attract a soulmate. After being continuously ridiculed and rejected by his peers and even his own father, played by Hugh Jackman, who was having a pretty big year in 2006, Mumble departs on a journey to learn what is causing the local fish population to decline and to find himself along the way. And, if you think this movie is about nothing but tap dancing penguins, you have clearly not seen this movie, because, good lord, they take this to the most insane levels possible. And I love it for that. I mean, this movie is absolutely incredible. Like, I really found myself really enjoying this movie. I enjoyed it right from the get-go, and every time I see it, almost 20 years later, it is not disappointing in any way, shape, or form. It's a film that still holds up after all this time, and it just shows you what George Miller can do, man. Like, this is the guy that we talked kind of about it last week with Ridley Scott, where he was trying to experiment with other genres, like with that movie A Good Year, which did not work very well. And he's proven that he can do other genres besides the big action movies or just sci-fi movies in general. George Miller, I think, has done that a lot better. I mean, he proved it this year with still showing that he's still got what it takes to make a damn good Mad Max movie after all these years. He's done a lot of these movies that are so different from one another. And George Miller is still one of those guys that's, I think, I get excited for more whenever I hear a new movie of his comes out, because it's just like, okay, this guy makes a ton of really good movies that are very much outside of their norm. So I'm very pumped to see what he does next. And yeah, this is another one of those movies that really shows what this guy is capable of doing. And he does a phenomenal job directing this movie. And not only that, like, the movie itself just really goes much deeper than you would have thought possible. Like I said, it's not a movie about tap dancing penguins, despite the movie's marketing campaign making it seem like it's just going to be nothing but, tap dancing penguins or a jukebox musical. It is in there. A lot of that is in there, but there is a much more deeper story in here that gets a little bit political at times. Not to the point where you completely, not to the point where it's completely obviously out in the open. No, it is very subtle. It's very subtle with its environmental message. It's very subtle with its political message, and it really doesn't go the route that you think it's going to go. And that's what I really like about the movie. I love that this film doesn't go down that route that could have easily destroyed this movie. It does something kind of similar to what the old Sonic Sat AM TV series used to do, where they also had a subtle message about, protecting the environment, and this little political thing going on here. And it was a great show, a criminally underrated show that has definitely gotten its popularity over the decades since it's been on the air. And this movie was a hit right from the get-go, so much so that it actually became the 4th non-Disney or Pixar film to win an Oscar for Best Animated Feature. I mean, this thing beat out Cars. This thing beat out Flushed Away. I think there was another animated film that was up for it. I think Monster House was nominated this year too. I could be wrong on that, but yeah, out of all the movies that this was nominated for, the fact that it won Best Animated Feature was actually kind of a surprise to everybody, because everyone thought Cars was going to take it after it won the Golden Globe for Best Animated Feature. I think that was the first year the Golden Globes had the Animated Feature Award, and everyone just thought that, well, it's a Pixar movie, Cars is going to win it. And no, people went with Happy Feet, and I'm glad they did, because it is definitely the far superior film over Cars. It also helps that you have such an amazing voice cast to work with this film. Not just Elijah Wood and Hugh Jackman, as I mentioned before, but Robin Williams is great in this. Brittany Murphy is very good for the role that she's playing in here, playing the love interest to Elijah Wood's character. Nicole Kidman playing his mother is very good. Hugo Weaving has a lot of good roles in this. Anthony LaPaglia, Steve Irwin. This was actually the last thing he did before he passed away. Just a really good movie, and just a lot of things about it that I really love about it that still hold up to this very day. It's a really damn good movie, and one that I always go back to, every once in a while, and I'm always still impressed on how well this movie holds up. They actually did make a sequel to this, which, yeah, it's not a good sequel, but by any means necessary, although it does have one of my favorite moments in cinema history. And when we get to that movie, I'll definitely delve into that. But I'll just say this. The Bridge of Light sequence in Happy Feet 2 is absolutely amazing. If the rest of the movie had been as good as that, I would have given that movie much more, just the same amount of praise as the original Happy Feet. But the original Happy Feet does still hold up, though. After all these years, it's still a fantastic film. What more can I say, man? It's a masterpiece. I recommend it a lot. So with all that said, let's go ahead and move on to our next movie. Another big movie that came out on this weekend. Daniel Craig making his debut as James Bond in Casino Royale. Not to be confused with the 1967 comedy movie with Peter Sellers starring in that film. I mean, there's literally a movie called Casino Royale, and it's more of a straightforward comedy, almost on the level of something like The Pink Panther, and it's fine for what it is, but this is the film that essentially reboots the James Bond franchise for a new generation. It establishes a new timeline, a narrative framework, and it's not meant to precede or succeed any other James Bond movies. And it has Daniel Craig in it, starring in it, as he stars as Agent 007, who is earning his license to kill. And after preventing a terrorist attack at Miami International Airport, Bond falls in love with Vesper Lynd, played by Ava Green, the Treasury employee assigned to provide the money he needs to bankrupt a terrorist financier, Le Chiffre, by beating him in a high-stakes poker game. And to me, Casino Royale is the definitive James Bond movie. This one tops the list of the best the series has had to offer. And Daniel Craig's made a couple of really good ones. Skyfall is right up there. No Time to Die is another really good one. But this presents a whole new approach to the Bond character that hadn't been seen since the first movie, making Bond not the crazed sex product that he later became, but instead he's a less experienced and a more vulnerable person. It's essentially the beginning of the transformation of James Bond. And it helps to have a guy like Daniel Craig, who I think is well and perfectly cast in this movie, creating this persona of this new James Bond, giving him a new look while also having the magnitude and grace of his predecessors. And the whole movie just puts the Bond series to places it had never gone before, focusing more on the story and the action, rather than the predictable tropes that the series had become known for. Specifically giving Craig a relationship with Ava Green's Vesper Lynd that feels real and authentic, and that's when the big twist of the movie happens with her at the end. It is a refreshing change of pace of what we're used to seeing at this point. It's a refreshing and new change of pace for the character of James Bond, who had long been seen as formulaic and cliche, but here he's given a refreshing change in pace of terms and character and story that works because of this great performance Craig gives to the role, the script's brilliant approach to having somewhat of a continuing storyline going here, and more importantly, just not being afraid to try something new or go for a new approach for the series. And keep in mind, this is directed by Martin Campbell, who did the same thing to Pierce Brosnan's James Bond back in 1995 with GoldenEye, setting up a new generation of James Bond. Well, that one was more closer to the Bond formula. This feels like a movie that is right in a brand new formula, a brand new style of filmmaking that the Bond films would later go from here. Unfortunately, a little bit of hiccups here and there in the Daniel Craig legacy, but Daniel Craig overall is a great James Bond, and to me, this is what I think of as the perfect James Bond movie. A fun film, a great movie that works on so many levels, led by a strong performance by Craig. Casino Royale is a great film. I can't recommend it enough. With that said, let us go ahead and move on to our next movie, and that is Let's Go to Prison. My God, what a major disappointment this was. Okay, first of all, this is directed by Bob Odenkirk. This is actually his second film as a director after Melvin Goes to Dinner, but this is his first major wide release as a director. And you also have a script written by Robert Ben Garant and Thomas Lennon, the two guys behind Reno 911, and also Mike with Patrick Jan. And a cast that includes Dax Shepard, Will Arnett, Chi McBride, David Koechner, Dylan Baker. For Dax Shepard, by the way, 2006 really is not his year, especially the last couple months. The best movie he was in didn't even get a proper theatrical release, but this movie did, and boy, is it a mess of a film. So Dax Shepard stars as John Lashitsky. Get it? Because he has shit in the middle of his name. That should be the first sign that the comedy is not going to be great here, but he is a car-stealing slacker with a weed problem and had been in Illinois' Rossmore State Penitentiary so many times, he knows its entire population of both staff and cons by their first names. Cursed with the old ill luck of being in the wrong place at the wrong time in possession of the wrong car, he's been deemed a lost cause repeat offender in the eyes of everyone else. When the heartless judge, who had been behind most of his sentences, goes to the big courthouse in the sky, John decides to ruin the man's legacy by having the judge's only offspring, Nelson Beatum in the fourth, played by Will Arnett, thrown in the slammer along with him. Here, the woke-class selfish jerk learns a certain old lesson the hard way. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. But has John gone too far in the payback department? What do you think? What do you think the answer to that is? But, yeah, this movie sucks. This movie is just a mess of a film, and it just really is a film that, according to Bob Odenkirk, he said that this movie was completely destroyed by the studio, and I can't really say that that's not a possibility that could happen, but the movie itself didn't even look funny to begin with. I remember watching the trailer for it back in the day, and there was only one moment that made me laugh, and that's when one of the jurors said, "We find the defendant guilty," and the judge was like, "You mean guilty?" Like, if that's the best joke I got from the trailer, then that's not a good sign that this movie's going to have anything worthy going forward. And unfortunately, yeah, the film sucks. This movie is really not funny by any means necessary. It's a boring movie. It really feels devoid of what everybody involved could do here. And yeah, you could make the argument that it's because of studio interference, but I think this was dead on arrival even before the studios got involved. I think the reason why the studios got involved was just like, hey, we got to try to save this stinker sometime soon. And they put it out and they realized, okay, we can't save this. Just put it out on the same weekend as the Dancing Penguin movie and James Bond. We'll just say that, oh, the competition was too tough for us. It's like, we know what you were doing. You knew it was bad, and you decided to just dump it out there so it could get completely destroyed by the competition, by the two bigger movies that were coming out that weekend. And, yeah, I would say that this is because of studio interference that the movie is bad, but Bob Odenkirk made a movie within the same year, and that was not good either. That was not a good film either, so, yeah, take that for what you will. But, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie. We talked about Let's Go to Prison. Let's talk about some awards contenders, or movies that were supposed to be awards contenders, starting with Richard Linklater's latest film, Fast Food Nation. Yeah, maybe crossing Super Size Me and Fahrenheit 9/11 into a movie probably wasn't the best way to go with this movie. You have Don Anderson, played by Greg Kinnear, who's the marketing director for Mickey's fast food chain. Get it? Mickey's, because we can't use McDonald's. No, we can't do that. He's the inventor of their best-selling hamburger, The Big One. Independent researchers have shown the presence of cow feces in the Big One. Don is sent to Cody, Colorado to verify if the main supplier of Mickey's beef is as efficient as it appears, and the production process is up to code. During his investigation, however, he discovers the horrible truth behind a simple hamburger. The reality is not like it's portrayed. Don discovers what the mass production system involves, from the temp workers like Amber to the exploitation of irregular immigrants. It's not only the meat being crushed in the machinery, but our society. And yeah, you'd probably have something there if the movie was engaging or anything interesting. And this just felt like Richard Linklater was trying so hard to go back to his indie roots, but he still wanted to make a more mainstream film than his usual stuff, but it just doesn't work. It's a movie that's really sloppy. It's a film that is really lackluster, despite a lot of good talent in this movie, too. Patricia Arquette, Bobby Cannavale, Paul Dano, Luis Guzman, Bruce Willis is in here, Wilma Valderrama from That 70s Show, Avril Lavigne, Chris Christopherson, Ashley Johnson, Ethan Hawke. A lot of really good talent involved in this movie, but man, it just didn't know what direction it wanted to take. It didn't know what kind of a movie it wanted to be. And I think the book's more provocative than the actual film is. I've actually read this book before. It is engaging to read. It's a very interesting read overall. And I was really looking forward to seeing it watching this movie after reading the book. And watching it, I was just like, yeah. This is about what I think everyone was saying. The movie wasn't going to be that good, and yeah, it really was not. it just didn't work for me. It's a film that it's trying to have a message, it's trying to say something, but it's just not there, man. It's a real sloppy mess of a film, and one that you should definitely avoid like the plague. So let's go ahead and get to another ensemble movie, Christopher Guest, with a brand new film for your consideration. So in this movie, the plot revolves around a group of three actors who learn that their performances in the fictional film they have not even completed yet, Home for Pruin, a drama set in the mid-1940s American South, are supposedly generating a great deal of award season buzz. And the movie is supposed to be a mockumentary about movies that are considered Oscar contenders and going all in and making sure that you're doing everything you can to get the nominations. And of course, you got the usual people who are involved in guest movies: Catherine O'Hara, Eugene Levy, who also wrote the script, Parker Posey, Harry Shearer, Fred Willard, Larry Miller, Bob Balaban, Jennifer Coolidge, Jane Lynch, Ed Begley Jr., John Michael Higgins. You know who you get in here. And yeah, this is definitely not one of his better movies as a whole. I mean, I like Christopher Guest movies a lot, but I think films like Waiting for Guffman, Best in Show, and A Mighty Wind are the far superior films. It's another one of those movies where I think there's a good idea in here, but it really doesn't want to go all the way with the satirical elements they could go with. It's hard to make a satirical Hollywood movie nowadays that's not a mainstream film. And I think this movie is having a hard time trying to figure out if it wants to go borderline mainstream or just go all in on independent. It's either mainstream or independent. Like, it can't decide on which one it wants to go into, which direction it wants to go into. And I think the film really suffers because of it. And it's a shame, because occasionally there'll be a good funny moment here and there, but other than that, though, there's nothing really about it that makes it that great compared to Christopher Guest's other movies. And this is actually his second to last film he'd ever direct before he would go back to making another film in 2016, which I've yet to see, but we'll probably get to that one when we get to that one. Mascots is the name of it, So that's for your consideration. Not a great film, but certainly could have been a whole lot better. But let's go ahead and move on to the last film we have here. Emilio Estevez directing a film, and that is Bobby. Another ensemble movie featuring a ton of big actors in here. Everyone ranging from Harry Belafonte, Joy Bryant, Nick Cannon, Lawrence Fishburne, Lindsay Lohan, Elijah Wood, another role here, Anthony Hopkins, Ashton Kutcher, Demi Moore, Christian Slater, Sharon Stone, Heather Graham, Mary Elizabeth Winstead. This is a film about the fictionalized accounts of the hours leading up to the June 5th, 1968 shooting of U.S. Senator Robert F. Kennedy in the kitchen of the Ambassador Hotel following his win of the 1968 Democratic presidential primary in California. And I remember going to see the film back when it came out in theaters, and I was really one of the few people that was defending this film because it's a really engaging film. And it showed what Emilio Estevez can do as a director, and it's a really compelling film where you do get invested in all of these characters as a whole. You do get invested by everybody in here. Like, you do get a sense of, it's a very character-driven film, obviously, not just for Bobby Kennedy alone, but for all these other people who were in this room during this big night overall. And and like I said, it's a really engaging film, and it's a really intense film that just works on so many levels. It shows that a lot of these actors still have got it. Like, Sharon Stone had a bad way to start the year with Basic Instinct 2, but then you look at her in this movie and it's just like, oh yeah, there's a reason why you got an Oscar nomination for Casino back in the day. Like, you're a really damn good actor. You could say the same thing about Demi Moore. Christian Slater proves he's still got the acting chops. So does Martin Sheen. Ashton Kutcher shows more than he shows in most of his movies. I mean, Shia LaBeouf, of course. Now, a lot of really good talent in this film all over the movie, and it does a very good job of painting the story of this horrible night in a decade where if your last name was Kennedy, you pretty much had the worst luck in the world, pretty much. And yeah, I mean, this is a really good movie. It's a film that was not the biggest critical success nor financial success when it came out. I was one of the few people that actually defended it on my show back in high school, and I still defend it today. It's still a really good movie. It's still an impressive film. It's definitely one that deserves a lot more attention. It shows what Emilio Estevez can do as a director as a whole. I thought it worked very well. I thought it was a really good film. I really enjoyed it a lot. I highly recommend checking it out. Bobby. And so with all that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. And the next time we meet, we'll look at Thanksgiving weekend. And boy, what a lackluster Thanksgiving weekend it was. Because we have Denzel Washington, who usually can do no wrong, starring in definitely one of his lesser films, Tony Scott's Deja Vu. A film that I just talked about recently as one of the worst Christmas movies of all time and one of the worst movies of all time. Matthew Broderick and Danny DeVito would deck the halls. Hugh Jackman, once again, starring in another movie this year. Darren Aronofsky's The Fountain. And probably the best movie overall this weekend, Jack Black and Kyle Gass starring in Tenacious D in The Pick of Destiny. We've got those 4 movies to look at. We'll delve into all of those on the next episode. That'll be coming up tomorrow. But until then, thank you so much for watching. And if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode. And also, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notification button because we post videos here every day, and you get updates on when new videos come out. Now, with all that said, I am off. I will see you guys next time. And until then, as always, take care.